We are about to celebrate our 100th episode, and we want you there. Media Litter Sandwich, we are recording our 100th episode on July 21st, 2018 at Falling Down Beer Company in Warren, Michigan. The event starts around 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's free. So come down, hang out. If you need more details, check out the website at medialittersandwich.com. And if you want to help out, email us at podcast@medialittersandwich.com. Today on Media Litter Sandwich, we're at Downriver Comic Con and we talk about...
We're going to talk about animation for motion pictures and television, like Smurfs, Secret of Nimh, Little Mermaid.
Wait, was Aquaman in Little Mermaid?
Possibly.
Welcome to Media Litter Sandwich. Once again, we're at Downriver Comic Con in Lincoln Park, Michigan at Lincoln Park High School. And with us, we have, you are wearing blue and I see a little mermaid.
Yeah, this is done by a young lady whose name I can't think of right now, but Doctor Who and his TARDIS are coming to pick her up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please introduce yourself. You are the guest of honor of this Comic-Con.
Oh my. My name is Philo Barnhart, and I've had a very interesting past that included things like the Smurfs, mixed up with things like 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, mixed up with things like Star Trek, and finally Little Mermaid towards the end of my career.
Man, I got a billion questions for you, but, I gotta say who else is on the show with us. We have Mark from
crazymark.com,
Will from
allaboutwilliam.com,
and we're Media Litter Sandwich. You could find us at medialittersandwich.com and dvradio.net, which we air on DV Radio Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. You could go there, hang out with all the veterans in the chat, and you can always talk to us about sponsorships and all that good stuff, and participate on our chats on Facebook, in our Facebook group, Media Litter Sandwich. And we are sponsored by Turtle Trinkets. Go check out all his great trinket stuff, spinners, necklaces, buttons, all sorts of stuff. You can check it out his Facebook. If you want something, just shoot him a message.
Spinners are always good.
Oh, man, I always said I would never have a spinner, and
They're
then
habit-forming, unfortunately.
Huh?
They're habit-forming, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. They're great little
Yeah.
fidget things.
Yeah, fidget thing.
So, I got a lot of questions. I don't know what you can answer.
Well, I'll take pertinent or impertinent questions, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay, because you worked on a lot of stuff, but everyone keeps talking about Little Mermaid, so I got to start with the Little Mermaid question.
Sure.
And of course, that's to do with the poster and the VHS cover that got some controversy there.
Yeah, well, I learned recently that I've been telling the story wrong, but basically that was it was not my friend David Pacheco's doing. David was drafting that poster out at the same time Tony Anselmo and I were drafting out the one of her in front of the moon in silhouette. You've probably seen that one before. She's sitting on the rock in the middle of nowhere. The moon is behind her, and she's painted very, very dark. Well, that's become kind of a classic, too, but for other reasons. The other one got a notorious reputation, and even when David signed my poster, I had everybody sign it for me when the movie was finished, and he wrote, "Dear Philo, I had nothing to do with this tower. Love, David Pacheco."
And for all the people listening, especially the veterans, because I know you want to hear us to say it, what was wrong with it? What did the tower look like when the towers in the castle looked like something in particular?
Well, it had a human part of the anatomy, the most especially the male anatomy.
A very phallic column.
Yes, phallic tower. That was actually painted in by one of the painters. There were 4 painters on the painting, the poster, and Tony and I only had one on ours. I don't remember who it was, but they did a beautiful job. But regardless, they had 4 people on that poster, and one of them decided to be naughty and put that in there. I think to see if anyone was paying attention, and eventually they were.
It took a while, though.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know who the painters were, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you also worked on Rescuers Down Under, correct?
Yes.
Did you work on the Rescuers?
No. I was working at hanna-barbara at the time Rescuers was done.
Okay. Yeah, because that had controversy too,
But-
so that's kind of interesting how that travels
But I
through.
later worked, I got into feature films via Don Bluth, who was one of the young directors on Rescuers, the original Rescuers.
Man.
And that's while they were still at Disney, and then he did a film with several of the animators at Disney who were dissatisfied they weren't learning enough about how the films were actually made when Walt was alive. So they set about exploring by making Banjo the Woodpile Cat in Don Bluth's garage in the mid to late 70s. And they split apart from Disney in 79 or so. And that's when I joined them. By then I was had done several TV shows.
What were some TV shows you worked on?
Later it was the Smurfs, but I worked on developing Galtar and the Golden Lance, and some of the new Johnny Quests for Hanna-Barbera, and also
Fantastic.
13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. We did new Jetsons, new Flintstones, and when Star Wars was new in 77, everything went space age, so Hanna-Barbera, not wanting to be left behind, they did Galaxy Goof-Ups and Space Ace, or not Space Ace, that was Don Bluth later. Galaxy Goof-Ups, Yogi's Space Race, that was it.
Space Race.
Space
Yes,
Race.
that was good.
And it was a lot like Wacky Races, but with spacecraft
Right.
instead of cars. Yeah. So,
Mark, we're talking cartoons, Hanna-Barbera. I know you. Shoot, man, go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to say you're an awesome guy. You're fantastic. I've seen you
thank you.
around. I've seen your work. I love your animation. And, of course, again, you worked on the primary cells, not the tweens.
oh yes. I did do tweens to start. That was the entry level of the business.
Yeah.
But you move up the ladder really fast. If they see that you have a good drafting ability, you
Now,
there you go.
Is that still true today, do you know?
Not so much because it's done digitally, but the films are still designed by hand, for the most part. But the animation is actually done by the computer.
Yeah, now, speaking of which, before became the computer thing, let's look at, Max Fleischer had his proprietary thing, and that was his rotoscope, okay? Remember that thing? Now, Disney had something that was proprietary back then, and we were talking about it. You know, it wasn't Photoshop, it wasn't After Effects or Maya. What was it?
Well, they did a number of pioneering efforts, but the biggest one was probably the multiplane camera.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, there was an art program that was like easy enough to fill in. It was like an augmented paint or what was it? Instead of cells.
You're talking about the
Yes, when you switched over from the cells.
post Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is, it's called the CAPS system. Now, CAPS stands for Computer Assisted Paint System, and that was developed by Disney towards the end of Mermaid production. And what the tech guys that were creating that would borrow some of the artists, and I thankfully got to be one of them, to come and give our interpretation. They didn't say anything about what we were seeing, but they just wanted to get our take on what they were doing. And I thought it was fantastic because they showed me two scenes. They were the same scene. One, and I didn't know this at the time, nobody did, but one was cell painted and the other one was the CAP system. And I said, well, why are you showing me the same scene? It's the same on both sides. They said, well, this one over here is the CAP system. That's the one where we scan in your drawing one at a time instead of photograph it on film. And we paint it right on the screen using a stylus.
Oh.
Yeah. But
And this is
they
old
still
school.
had to make sure that all the lines were sealed off. Because as you know, if you ever used a graphics program of any kind back in the early days, if you had a leak in your character where the lines didn't connect, it went outside of that and it filled up your whole piece and it pissed you off, basically. So
it's like MS Paint.
Yes.
It's like,
in order to avoid
this is
being
just drop my bucket right there.
in order to be to avoid being thoroughly pissed with your work, we had a separate group of animators that would sit there and just seal the lines up, make sure everything was sealed off. They became part of the checking department. Checking department used to just make sure everything was there, because a cell painter couldn't see for themselves whether it's going to seal off or not, and they just paint right up to the lines. Computer can't do that. Maybe they can now, I don't know. But
things are way different now.
But we're talking about the dark ages even for computer stuff.
Right.
But that was the beginning, and then eventually that became totally digital. And that's where we are now.
Now, I gotta ask, what did you do with Secret of Nimh? What was your role
Secret
in
of
that?
Nimh, a lot of things. Initially, I was brought in to be the key assistant to John Pomeroy. And I learned so much from him during the course of the film. But when you make an animated film, you generally pick your strongest sequence and you do that first. And so in this case, they started on the great owl sequence. Yeah, well, in the book, it's hinted at that he's probably from the same lab where the rats were experimented on. In our film, at least, there is a tie-in between Nicodemus and the owl. They both have the glowing eyes, for example. The mystic, kind of sage, almost alien characters.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
Which is just frightening for a child.
She goes to see the owl, and it was a challenge for me because I had never done full animation before, just television animation, which is called limited animation. That's for TV production. It's economical, and in a way, it's kind of harder to make up an exposure sheet for limited animation because you're keeping track of separate torsos, separate legs, separate arms, separate heads, separate eyeballs, separate mouths, all these separate things that have to work together, and they have to be written down for the cameraman. Full
that
animation
way you
is just
mix
one.
and match if you need to.
Yeah, it's just, and you can reuse the stuff ad nauseum. In fact, once a few scenes have been done for any production, they go into the bin and they become stock scenes that any animator can check out and reassemble and re-expose for their scenes. So that's like free footage for them every week to make their quota. Yeah. So we did a lot of that for Super Friends and things like that, hanna-barbara. But in between doing Nimh and the television work, I did Star Trek the Motion Picture. And that was a whole, other adventure.
Because that was counted as special effects at the time.
It's special effects. It's still hand-drawn.
Right.
We were hired, a whole team of us were hired to help them get the film done by doing hand-drawn animation. And what that involved was, oddly enough, doing all the computer screens and the little films that were running on the screens. You have to remember, folks, there was no CG back in 1979. That didn't get going until around 89, a decade later. So I think the first CG that was done in a film was for James Cameron's The Abyss, the water pod that took on the expressions of the people.
That was such an interesting movie.
That was the
first time. I think it still holds up.
It's the first time they did a CG effect in a film, as far as I know. And then there was Young Sherlock Holmes, which did phenomenal stuff, including the stained glass knight that came to life, and some other things that people thought were stop motion, but they were actually CG for the first time.
So, you look at Star Trek the Motion Picture, the special effects for that, I in my mind, I gotta tell you, it doesn't hold up today. I mean, totally different standards, completely different standards.
Yes.
That doesn't hold up, but at the time, that was like
It was a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we sadly we were late to the production. And in the film business,
there was a lot of weird
you
things
have
that happened
to-
with the Star Trek motion picture,
you
from
have
what I
to.
understand.
Well, any film I've worked on, if you don't have at least 150 feet of film that you did in that film, you will not receive a screen credit. So, plus we were latecomers to the film. The four of us that were actually hand drawing the animation for it. So we were left off the credits. We didn't realize we were going to be left off until we got to the wrap party and saw the movie all put together. And the four of us were totally blue. And then we had to drive to the Paramount lot for the rest of the party. They had a disco floor set up for us and food everywhere on several tables. You could go with your plate, just load up, and then go find a place to sit. Well, we got there late. The traffic was terrible in Hollywood that night. And we left the theater and went to the Paramount lot. It was on Soundstage 8. And loaded up on food. Then we thought, oh, no place to sit. So we looked everywhere. Finally, there was this nice man gesturing for us to come and sit with him. Who do you think that was?
Leonard Nimoy.
Close enough. It was Gene Roddenberry, the creator
that
of
was
Star
my
Trek.
That was my second guess.
Next to him was his wife, Majel Roddenberry. Majel Barrett Roddenberry. Pretty blonde lady turned around. I was going to be sitting between her and Gene Roddenberry. This pretty lady turns around. It's Grace Lee Whitney, who played Yeoman Janice Rand in the first season.
Right.
And what do you call it? Beaming. The beaming technician.
He played Mr. Scott.
The engineer.
Yeah.
She played the engineer in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, she was no longer Yeoman Janice Rand. But she was still called Rand. He apologizes to her in the film when they have the accident. The accident was neat to film. That's a whole other story. But he says, there's nothing you could have done, Rand. And that's, a lot of people who had never seen Star Trek before, they didn't know who she was. But anyway, I had the best time with them, and they cheered us all up. Four of us sat with them, their table. I'm very grateful.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I gotta look at your credits again. There's so many. There's gotta be another.
Well, it won't be on
here.
Star Trek. Actually, it won't be on Beauty and the Beast either, because I left before it was done. But,
Okay. Yeah, I did research that. I was curious what you did on there. Yeah. You just did some initial work on it, I assume.
Oh, I worked quite a bit on it, but the opportunity came up for me to work in a new department, and I went over to that, and that was back to California. I was working on Beauty and the Beast in Florida at the time, along with California, and got the opportunity to go into Disney Publishing, and that's what I did.
Okay. We gotta go back to Super Friends.
Okay.
You mentioned Super Friends.
Yeah.
What?
Wonder Twin powers activate.
I mean, all the superheroes now, do you just go, yeah, I worked on Batman before it was cool?
Yeah, well, it was our version of the characters. It was It's much more simplified for reasons of Saturday morning cartoons.
It was the version of Aquaman that gets made fun of.
Yeah.
And now they're finally making Aquaman
But
more of...
it's closer to the classic Aquaman, the way people remember him. Plus, he was blonde.
Yeah.
The new guy is decidedly an islander type of character.
Right. Aqua Bro. Yeah.
Well, he looks like a Polynesian, character. He's very dark.
Looks a lot like
Dark hair.
Count Drogo for some reason.
And, of course, covered with the tattoos. I don't mind that so much, but I thought maybe there'd be a classic version of Aquaman with the blonde hair and,
Right.
the orange tights or whatever they were. Am I wrong? Were they orange? Or he had a green... And, did he have a green...
Right, he
Was
had
it a green-
tattoos
was it
on the
orangey?
scales.
Was it like an orange color? I thought it was, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I just wanted to be sure I wasn't going crazy, that I remembered the orange top. Yeah.
Well, I know with the original look, they wanted him to look like a fish. That's why they had him wearing orange to make it look like a goldfish or something
Or like a
that.
koi carp or something, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah.
And eventually that gimmick didn't really need to be done anymore. But it was really cool
Yeah.
they had the scales as the tattoos and had the extra stuff.
Yeah.
Not saying I'm a
Well,
fan of the newest movie.
I remember
but-
the early versions of Aquaman before Hanna-Barbera did him. He actually was just on a cell moving. They would just move the cell around like he was hovering in the water. There was no actual animation. And I understand Ralph Bakshi was involved with a lot of those productions.
Really?
That and Rocket Robin Hood and the original Spider-Man show.
I had no
You know,
idea
the
Ralph
Spider-Man,
Bakshi was involved in
Spider-Man
that.
shooting webs from his hands. Da 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 da. You love the Spider-Man. Wherever there's a hang-up, you'll find the Spider-Man. Yeah, that one. I think Bakshi was involved with that, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
But then, Hanna-Barbera did Super Friends, and that's when I came in. So, and I loved drawing Wonder Woman because I loved her design for Super Friends.
Right. And all these
She had a
characters.
formula for drawing her that was really kind of fun to do.
Okay.
Her hairdo and everything.
Wow. And that was Super Friends was after Wonder Woman had her own TV show, or was it before it?
I believe it was after. Yeah.
Okay. So you
Or
really
might-
had a hand in bringing the.
Let's see, maybe not. Maybe it was after
No,
Super
I think
Friends.
Wonder Woman was 70s. More I think of it.
Well,
Live action.
Linda Carter.
Hey, Will, can I get a Google? Wonder Woman live action versus Super Friends.
And then
Yeah.
flash forward to now, and I struck up a friendship with Richard Hatch after all of these years, and we became friends, and we just lost him to cancer. It was a real shock just a couple of years ago.
Right. Man, you're so close working on Battlestar Galactica. And I think that 70s show, I debatably better than the remake. Than the reimagining. I'm sorry, it wasn't
I love the
remake,
original.
It was a reimagining.
I was crazy about the show. Yeah.
Well, it's not that it was a bad show. I just didn't like, especially the later episodes, where it kind of started insinuating religion in it, and they kind of went into a really weird area.
Yeah. No,
It seemed like they never knew what they wanted to do with some of the characters.
originals. It's the originals for me.
Right.
I hate to sound like a bigot, but that's the same for me in Star Trek also. It's the 60s version for me.
I love the Next Generation, and I think DS9 was. I didn't enjoy it as a kid. I mean, I did when Worf joined because
Charles and I put on the Next Generation, and we laugh. We howl with laughter because we just love to watch it and laugh because silliness.
Right. Yeah, I haven't watched the Discovery ones. The newest Star Trek. I've heard so much. I'm probably have to watch it eventually, but
It was actually interesting how they actually combined the 1960s style with the new effects. It's really interesting.
okay. You know what? You just want to sit over here because. Yeah, just jump on here. No, I can't hear you. There's not a thing in front of your face that's called a microphone.
See?
Or you. Yeah, why
course.
not? William's standing off to the side.
See how dangerous it is to hang around me?
I see.
We'll put you up there.
It's very weird.
Now, what's your name again? And you are an animator.
Yeah, my name is Daniel Jackson. I'm a very novice animator so far.
Okay.
So it basically got out of college trying to get my animation stuff working around, trying to get some animation stuff in place so far.
He met me here 2 years ago.
Yeah, this man basically helped me with one problem that I have. It's drawing females. That's kind of the weird thing. It happens to my family most of the time, too, when it comes to my sister, who also draws people.
Right.
She has the problem with drawing males. So when it came to the idea of drawing different sexes, it's that weird problem where I can't even draw any opposite sex at any cost.
Well, I heard drawing females is like one of the funnest things you can do as an artist, which I am not an artist. Bradley, go ahead and grab the chair.
And I draw on
yes
my
or
female
no?
side to do my work.
Well,
Everyone
you
has
rather
a male and a female side.
Oh,
I have
yeah.
a strong female side.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
drawing women's more fun than drawing men? It is? Okay.
Well, I haven't experienced that yet. I've been trying to draw females for the last 5 years. They turned all to shit. Draw my
practice
circle.
your circle and eggs. This draw. Once I get
We
all
need a
my
more bustier side.
once I get all my chickens like into where I'm moving to, we'll put up all the eggs up on the counter, and you can just draw every single egg.
Like James
and
Thurber
at
saying,
some part, you'll be able to tell this egg came from that hen.
is that like James Thurber saying, "Don't count your boobies until they've hatched"?
Wait until the peaches come firm, then you'll be fine. Then
Getting
you'll be
your
able to
ducks
do
in a
it.
row. Oh, those ducks. They don't cooperate sometimes.
Those poor ducks once they're in a row.
They don't always cooperate. I can attest to that.
Hey, I'm still lucky that I was actually do some live drawing because I was able to get a few because I still remembered a few times that they still allowed you to do people doing naked stuff. So I was able
in
to.
colleges, it's still a thing too. Absolutely.
Yeah, college is still a thing. It was awesome to see live a few people that I still.
Well, they want you to see how people are put together.
Yeah, most of the people that I had to draw had wider bodies, which I was very, very fascinated with, because when it came to characters, sometimes skinny isn't always the right option. Sometimes you want to know about more depth, more outlines, and everything.
Well, I'm forever grateful because I could finally see what creates the shapes when we're flesh covered.
Oh, yes.
You know, the muscles that wrap around here and come down are what creates this shape here.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Video version's way different than the audio version, and no, that doesn't mean the video was that scary. It's like, yeah, we're talking about drawing naked people, and video version's different than the audio version.
Yeah.
And this is a good spot once again to talk about DV Radio, and they have plenty of fantastic shows, such as the Struggle Brothers. Since we're talking about struggling of the human nature, check out the Struggle Brothers, and you can see all the great shows on DV Radio at dvradio.net. And also, while you're there, check out DV Farm, which is our charity of choice. There's a lot of information. You can go check out our interview with Bo from the other week, where he talks about DV Farm helping homeless veterans. That's our charity of choice. And I think I just shouted everything I need to shout out. Back to Star Trek, because I'm a nerd.
Hey, so am I and the rest of my family, brother. Star Wars and Star Trek, we're both on the same boat on that. Oh, man. They've been watching Star Trek Voyager for the last few months, based around that.
Now, I gotta ask, though, the Orville. Have you seen the Orville?
Oh yes, all the new episodes
Is
from
Orville
the first time.
more Star Trek than current Star Trek now?
Yes. You're speaking of Discovery.
Yes.
Yeah, I watched a couple.
And the JJ verse.
And
Yeah,
the movies,
I would say yeah. It's funny too because I almost wasn't surprised when I saw who actually put Orville together. My friend Brannon Braga is actually over there, and he's one of the original Star Trek people. So I wasn't surprised. It's like where everyone migrated. They went over to Orville, and that's where all the Star Trek stories are now.
Yeah, you can't go to Star Trek to watch Star Trek stories.
And
That's
plus-
what the Orville's for.
Plus, it's got the humor. It's got the humor that Star Trek used to have, too. And in fact, even more than Star Trek had. More humor.
So when you were offered to do some stuff for the Star Trek movie, were you a big Star Trek fan at the time?
Oh, yes, starting from when it was new in '66.
Right.
I was a little boy, but I was about 10 years old, I guess. Yeah.
That's okay. I started going to Star Trek conventions.
Oh, we talked about.
When I was like 7 or 8 was the first time I went to a Star Trek convention.
It's all we talked about in school. Hey, did you watch Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock last night? Oh, yeah, that was so cool. Blah, 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 blah. It was groovy, man. Yeah.
Oh, man. I thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything you would like to talk about?
Oh, you have any pertinent questions or impertinent questions for me? We'll be fine.
How do you get into animation today?
That's a good question.
That's a very good question. I'd like to know, too. Because most of what I do is by hand, meaning I draft by hand, I design by hand. Sometimes I use computers to paint, primarily. Sometimes I do things right into the computer, but it still takes an artist's hand, to get it done. So I'm not sure, because the process used to involve a great deal of artists who would sit there and actually make the things move one drawing at a time. So I'm not sure. But the best advice I can give you for doing that kind of animation is just to study life drawing as much as you can. Observe how people and animals and things behave, how they move. That includes how fabric moves. The guys at Disney, the old-timers, they would take footage of somebody moving pieces of fabric around, different pieces, and would discover that things have different weights. Some things float on the air, some things drag very heavily through the air. They have what's called secondary motions. Everything has a secondary motion. For example, when a lady wearing a skirt twists around, the skirt will wrap around her, yes, but when she changes direction, it's going to start unwinding in the other direction. That's a secondary motion. There's lots of follow-through and secondary motion on people's hair. The longer it is, the more follow-through you can do on it.
Nice.
Secondary motions. Talk about secondary motions when we were doing The Mermaid.
All the water. Hair doesn't move like that in the water,
How are we going to do the idea of this being underwater? Well, yes, we had the effects department. They were going to do as many bubbles as they possibly could, and they just went insane with bubbles. But to take pity on them, we decided to show that the hair was moving with the current. So the hair had to have its own timing charts, and it was often doing its own thing. But there were times when Ariel would say stop. What she was doing, she'd stop completely. And the hair, we took footage of Sherry Stoner playing the part in a water tank across the street at Walt Disney Imagineering. They had a test tank where they tested all their Disney attractions for the theme parks. So we had her swim around in there. There's portholes, and we filmed her. And there was a time where she stopped, and her hair, she had really long hair that was her own. It wasn't a fall or a wig. The hair just kept spilling over her shoulders. So we actually put that into the film. It's when Sebastian is singing Under the Sea, as she stops and her hair keeps going. So that was all stuff that we didn't think about until we saw somebody perform it actually in the water. So that's all stuff you should study, how things behave, how they move. It's not always going to be the same if you're in outer space or in the water or in the air,
I do have a question.
Yeah, what's up, Brian?
So you worked on Super Friends, right?
Super Friends, yes.
Did you ever get tempted to put Aquaman in the Little Mermaid?
Okay, so the question, the question was, were you ever tempted to put Aquaman in the Little Mermaid?
Which I think
There's got to be some kind of goofy sketches somewhere.
Oh, in the film? I think he actually. Well, I know Goofy Donald and Mickey made an appearance in the stadium right in the opening of Mermaid. If you freeze frame it when Triton's coming in his chariot, you can see them down. I think there is an Aquaman at some point, either in that audience or later in the film somewhere.
Oh God!
Yeah.
I'm just surprised DC didn't
People are
find
always
that
hiding
sooner or later,
characters.
too.
So Aquaman is in the movie somewhere?
He might be down there in the audience. Yeah. Because we had.
I guess.
We had.
You're not confirming it. You're saying there's a
hundreds.
possibility.
There's the possibility because we hit all kinds of
I
characters.
gotta pull out the
in that
VHS of the
audience.
movie now. I got to.
I'm about to do a Superman.
Just off the VHS,
A
boys.
Superman drawing for the Superman celebration in Metropolis, Illinois, and I'm doing a crowd scene, so I'm hiding Lex Luthor in the front. And he's holding a cake plate, party plate with a piece of cake, and he's eating his cake with a fork, and Superman is flying above with the two cakes. I'm debating whether to show the slice missing or not. Maybe I will. I don't know what I'm going to do yet.
Oh, man. So is this like Super Friends Superman, or is it more modern Superman?
Oh, at the celebration?
Yes.
It's all the Supermen that have been done.
Okay.
Okay.
For the Lex Luthor, it's going to be
actual
the one that you've done?
The actual city called Metropolis in Illinois.
Okay.
And it's their 40th, I believe it's their 40th year doing the Superman celebration. Cool. And DC is involved. It's
So, okay, just let's hit the question with you real quick. Mm-hmm. How did you get into actually working in animation? Mm-hmm. Did you know somebody? Were you just right place, right time?
Yeah, when it comes to trying to work on animation, so far I've been trying to get myself out there. I haven't. So far, it's getting tough to do that, but in many cases, it would just be trying to show off what you have in work. Basically, trying to show off what you can do. Basic film reel stuff and everything.
If I was doing something right now, he'd be with me.
Yeah, because I'd be in the back talking Star Trek. Or Star Wars.
No, we'd be busy making films.
Okay.
It would more likely be test wheels, more likely, just to show off what you can do. If you can show off what you can do, you might actually have a chance.
I just finished teaching a traditional class, and there are people out there that are hungry to do it by hand again.
Yeah. Okay, where were you teaching at?
I had 14 students at Triton College. Triton
College,
if you can believe
was that on purpose?
No, Triton has been there for years and years and years, decades. Yeah, I didn't make that up.
And somebody had to be like, wait, what's this guy?
It is
Little
appropriate,
Mermaid?
though.
Yeah, he fits in here at Triton.
Yeah, It is appropriate, though. I feel that.
Yeah.
But my folks picked it up, so it's still teachable.
Very cool.
Best advice I ever got was from Andy Engman at Disney in the 70s when I was first considering getting into the business. And he looked at my stuff and he says, still the best way to start is by doing life drawing from life.
Oh, yeah.
Get some attitude into your drawings because basically you are a performer with a pencil.
Yep, the college
I'm talking about the traditional animation.
Right.
Get as much attitude as you can into your characters and become the best draftsperson you can. He says, you're pretty good at hands, but you could be a lot better. And the way to do that is to study the actual bones. Find out how
we're just
going
to cheat and give them less fingers.
No, if you know what those bones look like under there, get some anatomy, get some life drawing in. And that's the first thing I did, and it paid off. Yep.
Yeah, and I know the college I was teaching at for a time, they still, it was there was a heavy push for graphics and all sorts of design, even for engineer students, but they still have to take life drawings. Mm-hmm. They still had several different classes of life drawings because it still helps. Even if they're drawing car parts, they still had to do that.
Right.
You have to learn every single function before you can create the entire thing.
Hey, how can you draw an engine if you can't draw a female? I mean, come on.
Aside from teaching animation, I can tell you what I am doing now.
Okay.
And that's many, many books and new book ideas coming up with my friend Charles D. Moisant
Nice.
of Silver Phoenix Entertainment, and he is primarily a comic book creator and printer, publisher. And he's actually published my first portfolio book, I Want to See.
So it's like an art of book.
And it's all the stuff that I've done at conventions for the last 4 years. Some of it's very funky, and we put it in a book. And there's also a biography by our friend Brian K. Morris, who's a wonderful writer, and he interviewed me over a couple of days and wrote my story. So it's in the first part of the book, and then the drawings are after. So I'm also doing a series of books with Charles called Whispers from the Void.
Now, are
It's
these
a horror
graphic
comic book.
novels or?
They're horror, primarily horror comic books, but he does a lot of science fiction.
Okay, are they graphics, or are they just all words?
No, they're written as well.
Okay.
They're honest to God comic books. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So they're by graphic novels, I mean comic books, but more in a novel form.
Yes. Well, they're not graphic novels, but they are comic books.
Okay.
Yeah, they're series.
Okay.
He's also working up one that's tells the history of police in America.
Oh yeah, I think I saw an advertisement. On
Yeah,
that
and I'm sure he would
somewhere.
be happy to talk to you about that while he's here too. Yeah,
Oh, very cool.
and
I'll have to talk to
he
him.
can tell you more about Whispers from the Void also.
Okay. I'll try. Well, that might be next
But,
week
but
on.
Charles is the one that saved my hash because he got me involved with the conventions again. But now, as a professional, I'm not a fanboy anymore.
Right.
My fanboy days are done. Many years passed, and now I'm doing conventions professionally with him.
Well, we will try to get him on the show tomorrow, possibly.
Yeah, that would be
he
wonderful.
seems like he's number. So hey, that's a little bit of teaser for
Well,
next
he's,
week.
he's
Maybe,
very, very well versed, and he would be happy to.
maybe we'll see him
Talk to
rollerblade
you.
up and down here like I saw him a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Him roller skate up and down the conventions.
He'll give you a wonderful show. I believe it.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for coming. Once again,
Well,
please,
thank you for having me.
please shout out a website.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank
Talk to
you.
you too.
Do you have a website or a good place where people can find you at?
Yes, that's silverphoenix.net. You can find Charles and myself, and we're also on Facebook. Silver Phoenix Entertainment, and Philo Barnhart Art, Whispers from the Void, and I think that's everything.
Where can we find some of your work at?
Most of my work I'll be posting on Facebook, and next month I'm actually going to be working at the Street Art Fair, so you'll be probably seeing some of my work there as well.
Okay, so your Facebook is.
It's
Go
the-
ahead, point your mouth towards the mic.
Sorry. The Facebook is Daniel Jackson. I post it when I do have some good stuff
Right.
lying around, but sooner or later I'll be able to get most of my stuff
And
out there.
you'll be at the Wyandotte Street
Street Art-
Fair. That's in Michigan.
Yes.
This is one of the biggest street fairs I ever see. It's a huge. It's a big deal.
Well,
here, that's this month in June or is it in July?
It's in July. It's gonna be
Okay.
it's gonna be in July, Wednesday, July 11th to Saturday, July 14th.
okay.
What I'll be doing is basically helping out kids I'll be teaching kids the difference of different cartoon characters and everything. While
Oh wow, fantastic. So okay.
they basically got me because I worked for the city for about 2 years at this point.
Oh, so you can check his Facebook out. You can check him at Street Fair, and you said Silver Fox,
Silver Phoenix.
Silver Phoenix. Okay.
You need the phoenix. You need the net to catch the birds. So it's silverphoenix.net.
And of course, I'm Toaden. Find me at Toaden.com. And you, of course, find Media Litter Sandwich at MediaLitterSandwich.com and DVRadio.net, which we air there every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And one of us will be in the chat room, hopefully, and just pretty much hang out with you. And we're all over, we're on Podbean, Podknife, iTunes, Spotify, TuneIn, all that good stuff. Pretty much, if we're not on the podcast app that you listen to, let us know and we'll try to get on it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Big shout out to Turtle Trinkets for sponsoring us. And may the algorithms be in your favor.